Mr. President, every week I try to come down on the floor and talk a little bit about my state, do a little bit of bragging in what we call our Alaskan of the Week series. Now, there's a lot to talk about with regard to Alaska, and people in the gallery, people who are watching, we would love for you to come on up, visit our great state. It'll be the trip of a lifetime. The scenery, of course, is gorgeous. Mountains are rugged, but it's really the people that make my state so special. Rugged, self-sufficient, kind, and very generous people all across an area that is over 2.5 times the size of Texas. I apologize to my Texas colleagues. They get a little upset when I talk about that, but it is true. So, Mr. President, every week we've been recognizing a group or a person who has worked to make Alaska a stronger place, a stronger community, a state that I think is the best state in our great nation. And I call these individuals our Alaskans of the Week. So today I'd like to take you and others watching to Alaska's interior, to a town called Fairbanks, Alaska, where about 32,000 of my fellow Alaskans live. A beautiful, wonderful place. Fairbanks is hot in the summer. My wife and I were married there many years ago, got over 90 degrees when we got married in August, but real cold in the winter. We spent the January 1, 2000, the millennium celebration in Fairbanks with our kids, our family. 50 below zero, without wind chill, cold. It's a place that I love, where my wife was born and raised, where we lived, where my in-laws still live, and where Jeff Cook, our Alaskan of the Week, calls home. So Jeff has been in Fairbanks his whole life. His parents moved to Fairbanks in 1938. He went to college in Oregon, where his wife Sue was there, but the couple moved back to Alaska, to Fairbanks, and started a family. He's now 74 years young, and he and Sue have 4 children, 2 of whom have settled in Fairbanks, 5 grandchildren, and he's the patriarch of not only a great family, but of many community organizations throughout Fairbanks and really Alaska. Throughout the years, Jeff has had a career in real estate and business, sat on numerous boards, community groups. Let me just give you a couple examples of his community work. Sitting on the boards of the Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce, the University of Alaska Board of Regents, the Fairbanks Rotary Club, the Greater Fairbanks Community Hospital Foundation Board, the board for the State of Alaska Chamber of Commerce, the Rasmussen Foundation Board, the boards for Alaska Airlines, for Wells Fargo Bank. This is an individual, a leader, who has been involved in his community for decades. A perfect example of the community-minded individual who we call our Alaskan of the Week. So we could be done right here, Mr. President. That's a pretty amazing career. A great example is someone dedicated to his state, to his country, to his community. But Jeff has done a lot more. He has recently used all his energy, all his experience, all his community involvement to embark on what really has become an extraordinary fundraising campaign to raise money for cancer research. So important for our nation, so important for Alaska. Well, this became a personal issue for Jeff. Let me tell you this story. Last March, he and Sue received a devastating phone call from their youngest daughter, Chrissy, who is 34, and she lives in Las Vegas with her husband and 2-year-old daughter. She called them to tell them the bad news, really the horrible news, that millions of American families hear every year, that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and that she had a positive match for the BRCA2 gene, which increases the risk of developing breast cancer or ovarian cancer. Jeff and Sue felt powerless against this disease when they heard this. He said, quote, "When you're a parent, it doesn't matter how old your children are, you're supposed to slay the dragons and conquer the monsters and protect your kids." If that wasn't devastating enough, weeks later, he and his wife made sure everyone in the family, in the Cook family, got tested. Unfortunately, 5 other members of the family tested positive for this gene. So they're all being monitored now. So here's what Jeff said. We couldn't conquer the cancer, but we had to do something. He said he had heard about the American Cancer Society's Real Men Wear Pink campaign, a fundraising program that was held in October. In October, as everybody knows, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. About 3,000 men across the country participated in the program this year. The Real Men Wear Pink campaign. So Jeff started with a goal, a pretty impressive goal of raising $5,000 for cancer research. An email list of about 70 people, most of whom were in Fairbanks. And Mr. President, within 90 seconds after his first email, he had raised $1,000. Pretty good. And then what happened? The community of Fairbanks, of Alaska, really of the whole country, started opening up to his plea. Donations kept coming in. And the more donations he received, the more Jeff worked at raising funds. Now, many of the people he knew were donating, but what happened? Strangers from across Alaska and across the country started to send money for this very worthy cause. Breast cancer research, often with heartfelt stories of their own or their loved ones or their own struggles with cancer or those of their kids. Someone from a small town in New York State sent him $250. As the weeks passed, he began to pay attention to how he was stacking up against others. Across the country, Jeff's a competitive guy. He's very successful. When he reached the number that he was number 10 in the country in terms of fundraising for this very important matter, he told one of his friends that there was no way he could be the best number one person, that he could beat the number one person ahead of him who had raised $30,000. No way. That's a high number. Now, Fairbanks is not a very big city, and the other people on the list above him were from much bigger cities across the country with what he thought were larger connections and larger networks. But his friend told him, "Don't underestimate yourself, Jeff." And after he read that, he said, "All right, I'm going for broke." So this is what he did, Mr. President. He was all in, started fundraising everywhere. And when it was all said and done on this campaign, Jeff Cook from Fairbanks, Alaska, a town of a little over 30,000 people in Alaska's interior, was the number one fundraiser in America for breast cancer research this year. Number one. In terms of the American Cancer Society's Real Men Wear Pink campaign, Jeff Cook raised over $120,000. If my colleagues were down here, I'd ask them for a round of applause. That's for the entire country. Think about that. Now, we come down to this floor a lot and debate cancer research, medical research, very important. Here's one individual in America who raised over $120,000 through his own energy and passion and love of his daughter. This is a testament to Jeff's perseverance, but it's also about the good people in Fairbanks and throughout Alaska and really throughout the country. As Jeff said, it's so much about our community. There was such an outpouring of love and goodness and generosity. That was the most touching part of this entire experience. Well, what else did Jeff learn, Mr. President? That his daughter, Chrissy, who underwent chemotherapy and a double mastectomy, is stronger than he ever imagined. She's recovering well, but she's still in recovery. So I'm going to humbly ask my colleagues and those watching on TV to put a prayer in for Chrissy and other cancer victims, like Senator Hirono, who was just on the floor. Put them on your prayer list as they're in recovery, all of them. But I just want to end, Mr. President, with a big thanks to everybody in Alaska and across the country who are part of the Real Men Wear Pink campaign, literally raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for breast cancer research. Thank you to Jeff, of course, for not underestimating yourself, but for another mission well done as a community leader in Fairbanks and throughout Alaska. And congratulations for being our Alaskan of the Week. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.